Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a real play dungeon master for a podcast? Or where they get all those wonderful ideas for building new worlds and making it all come together? Today I talk with Ben from Lost Legends Tales of Thurne, and we discuss where he gets some of his brilliant ideas and how he builds a world and a campaign. So, stay tuned because it's time to get geeky with Kiki. With me today is Ben, the DM of Lost Legends Tales of Thurne, a real play Dungeons & Dragons podcast. Ben also has a blog entitled Beardy the Dungeon Master, and he is also a history teacher. How are you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing pretty swell. I got my cat here. I got some fresh made iced tea over in the fridge. Life is good.
Oh, hell yeah. Now, sweetened or unsweetened?
Unsweetened. Yeah,
Very
sweet
good.
tea is an abomination. That might divide whoever's listening to this. Yeah, I can't do it. It's too much. Like I take a sip and then make like the face, you know? Ugh.
Yeah. So I spent 20 years of my life in North Carolina. Sweet tea to me is here's your brown water that has mostly sugar in it. Like that's what it is. There's no flavor.
It's like, do you want some tea with your sugar?
Yes. See,
Ugh.
I knew I liked you. So I am super excited that you're here because I am a history nerd myself. I have a degree in archaeology and one in physical anthropology. So I was like, I gotta have you on just for that alone.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the offer to come on and tell you about our podcast.
Absolutely. We had Logan on, and this week we're going to get to see sort of a different perspective, the guy running everything, and as I always joke, trying to get everyone killed.
Oh, that's harsh. I don't try to kill people. I at least try and make it look like it was their idea, you know?
Right?
No, I was running Tomb of Annihilation a few years ago at the bookstore in town. I was running the Adventurers League for the Quad Cities. We were right in the middle of the tomb, like a Sarax dungeon. It was really gnarly. And my friend Steve, his sister came in. She was in town, you know, and she wanted to play. And so we got her like a level 1 rogue. Literally 20 minutes into our 3-hour session, she runs into a room and this flesh golem like pops her one, and I rolled a nat 20 on the damage. So she's got like 7 hit points, and it did 48 plus 12 hit points of damage. And so it just popped her like a zit. And she's like, am I dead? It's like, yeah, sorry. We have 2.5 hours to go.
And that's when you had a backup character, right?
Yeah, I had some from the starter set, but like those are all level 1 too. I only have so many character sheets on hand.
Oh my goodness. So you have created the world in which the gentlemen are getting to play in.
Absolutely, yep.
And I know that you, at least in one scenario, I know that you pulled from history and a little bit of literature. No spoilers. So I have a 2-part question. Do you find it easier to develop an entire new world because you have that history background? And then a little bit about what is it like, the process of creating that for you anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me answer the first part, and then I'll get to the second part. Because the second part, I've got like a method that I use. So having a history background, really to me, what that means, because for the last 10 years, I've either been studying history or teaching history at the junior high level. And so what that means then is that when it comes to adventure ideas, I've got like a bigger toolbox than, your average bear. Like I've read about different experiences people have had, different conflicts, different plots. And so I can kind of take those ideas from history, sand off the edges, and apply it to like a fantasy setting. It's close enough where if someone knows the history, they could be like, hey, that's kind of like this thing that, this event that happened, or this character's kind of like this person from history. Unique enough where the players can make it their own also. So like, for example, one of the games that I ran was based off of Alien versus Predator, but it was in the Star Wars universe. Because like, that could totally exist in Star Wars,
That's freaking cool, actually.
Yeah, it was super fun, except for the ending. The players had fun, but I was just like dying inside a little bit because the final epic boss fight was like the party versus the predator. And he has all these hit points and 2 attacks, and he's got the laser on his shoulder and the big knife thing like Wolverine. The very first character to go was the Wookiee, and he critically hit him, and it was using the fantasy flight system. So we did the critical hit, knocked him prone. He just could not get up because everyone else critically hit him and made it where he just physically could not stand up. Like he didn't have the ability. They knocked down the predator in the very first turn, and then everyone just took turns like wailing on him. It was really nuts.
Wow.
Another time, I ran another Star Wars game at a convention, and pretty much because Star Wars is Empire versus Rebels, and really so is the American Revolution. It's the British Empire versus us American rebels. The party, they ended up accidentally causing like the Star Wars Boston Massacre.
Nice.
The look of horror on their faces made it so worth it. It was really valid. It was like, yes, I got like real emotion out of these guys. It was awesome.
That's actually really cool. I'm going to let you finish the second part first because I could talk all day about the Revolutionary War. So
it was so cool. It's part of our curriculum now, and I love every second of it. Pretty much like teaching history just means I have a bigger toolbox, a bigger reservoir of ideas and characters and plots and situations and conflicts that I can then adapt into a D&D setting. And in the podcast, there's definitely a few of those where it's like kind of taken from history or from literature, but there's also some just original ones where I'll be driving and think like this would be kind of a neat thing to throw at them, pull it over and type it in a note, and then keep driving. Now, as far as my process for making like an open world type of game, or my method, for me, it starts with the map, because I'm really, really into maps. There's a website, it's like donjon.gobbledygook, but if you go to Google and you type in Donjon, it's like this thing. It's got sci-fi random generators, it's got fantasy random generators, horror game random generators, and one of those is a map generator. So I've gone on there and made probably 25 maps. It's all random hex maps, which then, using Xanathar's Guide to Everything in 5th edition, you can easily transfer that into like travel rules that they provide. So yeah, step one is getting the map. And so on these maps, there are pre-populated locations like the title. So you could have the Sunless Citadel, the Fortress of Mirael the Mighty, the Iron Throne, Castle, whatever. There's like 50 or 60 locations on here. And so kind of where the legwork comes in is that for each location, I'll make a Google Doc with a separate page for each location. So it's like one mega Google Doc. For each location, I flesh out 3 things. What is the history of the place? Like, why does it exist? Who are the key people that live there? People they could interact with. Some quest givers, if there's any royalty, or like a council, that kind of thing. And then the third thing for each location is between 4 and 6 adventure seeds. And so those are just things that the party could do if they go there to interact with that environment. And I try and make them pretty unique to that location. Like it's not samey. Everywhere has different adventure seeds.
Is so super helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had a lot of success with it with my Tuesday group and with Roll for Damage here. But kind of what it ends up happening then is that once you have this Google Doc complete and there's things to do everywhere, you can airdrop the party anywhere on the map, and no matter where they go, it's an open world, and you've already done all the work so that they can just enjoy the experience. And for you, as a dungeon master, all you have to do is look up that location, and boom, here's some stuff to do. Here's some adventures, quests, what have you to go on.
I love that you started with the map. I'm recently DMing for the first time after being a player since D&D was created. And my husband and I, he was kind of stuck home with quarantine for a while, so was I. So I was like, let's try to convert our 3.5 characters to 5. So we did that. And like I said, I never DM'd before, so I was like, all right, let me try it because I have stories. He knows I'm a good storyteller, so I was like, yeah, try it. Damn the rules. Rules are rules. You get the basic gist of how everything works. If we run into a problem, it's just me and you. We'll work through it. Everything was going great until I realized that I had stuck him in Thurne, but I'd also created some of my own towns. And then I was like, this sucks because I should have just created a whole map of like a whole new place for you to be. I found it so difficult. I actually sat there for like a half an hour just staring at a blank page. I'm very much a map person too. So I think that's awesome that's like, boom, this is the first thing you do. I'm like, yeah, duh, that's the first thing I should have done.
Well, I found as well, like a dungeon master that makes their own material, they tend to know it better as well. Like if I was just to run an adventure set in Faerun tomorrow, I don't have all that background knowledge like the gods and what all the cities are and, the factions and stuff. Whereas if I'm creating all the stuff, then I'm a little more invested inherently just because that's all my creation that they're playing. So from a dungeon master's perspective, it's like, I don't know, I think it's a little easier to have it be your own creation. Like it's more time intensive for sure, but the end result I've found is much better. You know your world better, which means you can provide a better experience for your players.
Right, because then I found myself just sort of, I'm okay, well, this guy's a follower of Lathander and this guy follows Kellenvor, but then I need to go read all that too. I agree with you. It's a lot easier if I was developing my own gods and my own histories. It's like it inside and out.
Exactly.
If I have to go back and I have to read it, I have to like read everything and like take all this in, and I'd almost rather like just create it myself.
Right. Yeah, because then you can personalize it too. So going back to the question, so after you have all those locations like statted out and created on your map, between like 50 and 60 locations on this world map, then what you want to do is go back and proofread and make sure that it's not samey, because you want to have really interesting, distinct locations so that no two feel exactly the same. Even if they're both like a citadel or a fortress or like a jungle city, there's certain things you can do to make them unique. For example, if they worship specific gods, in the one, they might worship the god of chaos. And so they have a holiday. The party stumbles into town and, oh, it's the holiday of the chaos god. And there's everyone around like flipping coins and using that to make their decisions today. Or these guys follow the god of order, and it's like spring cleaning day, just to kind of give it that unique feel. Another thing also to bear in mind when you make your own open world campaign is the Pantheon. I'll admit, I 100% struggle with names. There's just so many names, and it's hard. So in my home games, I go with two gods, order and chaos, because neither is inherently evil.
Mm.
And so for the podcast, though, I wanted to make it special. I wanted to like maximum effort. So there's more gods in the Pantheon, but most of them are also kind of dual nature, like light and dark, order, chaos, death and life, that kind of thing. Where neither one's really evil per se. It's just how you view it.
Right. And oh, no spoilers.
Right.
So many awesome things going on with that. And I love your Pantheon, actually. It's really neat. It's very cool.
Thank you. Season 1, in my mind, from like a storyteller GM perspective, is to introduce all the listeners to the world and give you a taste of what everything has to offer. And then season 2, I'm looking to deepen the world. So it'll be a little bit more lore interwoven, a little bit more backgrounds, make it like a real place that feels lived in. Like this fantasy world could exist somewhere.
Yeah, I'm totally into it already. So anything else that you're going to add to it is going to be really amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So for me, the final step of world building is making kind of like god level plots. And I usually do like one per region. In my home group, there's 3 continents. And so there's 3 epic plots, some kind of adventure that would take them around the continent and then would take maybe 2 months of playing for 4 hours to get through with like bigger implications, as well as interweaving secrets. I always have 1 secret per player. And these are world-changing secrets that they don't know, and they can only figure out through play. So, like, for example, in my home group, one of the secrets that the group discovered was in this location called the Fortress of Mirail the Mighty. And so the official history that their characters knew is that it was a ruined-out dwarven fortress up in the mountains, and that the king went crazy and made all of his followers start mining this fool's gold, which is worthless. They revolted, whole bunch of people died, and now it's just like an empty ruin up in the mountains. And so the players went there and they found the king's crown, and they found out the secret what there was that it's a crown of true seeing, and that the court wizard had enchanted the gold to look like fool's gold. So it's actually legit gold, and the king was the only one that knew it because his crown was a crown of true seeing. Whereas all the peasants, they thought they were just like wasting their time. And so the party has basically this giant mine of gold up in the mountains that they have access to, and they're trying to decide what to do with it, because the more they mine, the more attention they're going to bring to themselves. You could have like a gold rush type situation.
That's brilliant. That's really brilliant. I love it.
Thanks. But yeah, it's one of those things like they're the only 8 people in the world that know that. Everyone else thinks, oh yeah, it's just a crappy mine full of fool's gold, full of pyrite, and they could only figure that out, like the truth, through play.
And now I'm just thinking about all that gold as a player, being like, nah, how many houses could I buy with all that stuff without attracting any attention?
Right. Yeah, like a town pops up and everyone's just like, what?
Well, it's the age old, like, what if I win the lottery, but I don't want anyone to know?
Right. Like, which Pacific Island am I buying to retire on?
Right. Yeah. And I might got to keep that a secret.
Totally. But yeah, so when it comes to building a world, those are kind of the steps that I go through. I think the first time you run through it, it'll probably take you a couple of weeks to get all the ideas down and proofread it again and get things how you want it before your players are ready. But once you kind of get that method down, then it goes much quicker. So like currently, I'm ordering a Star Wars galaxy map, or universe map, I guess, off of Amazon, and then I'm going to do that process, but for Star Wars, because my players, we're going to start a second Star Wars campaign, and kind of the same process, like wherever they go in the galaxy, whatever planet, there's going to be adventure seeds, and then each sector is going to have like a big badass quest that they can do.
Okay, so I do have this to say. You've developed a very sweet love story without overdoing it or pushing anything. And as one of these women who I play this game because I like to stab and set people on fire. So I'm kind of like, no spoilers, but also kudos to the player for making it that way. So was there any inspiration in particular for this part of the story? Yeah, it just flowed like so nicely.
Yeah, that was one of those things, you can plan X, Y, and Z, and then when you're in the moment in the game, A, B, and C end up happening. And yeah, that was one of those things that just has kind of evolved naturally. And after the first few episodes, after that, the seed was planted for that, pun kind of intended. I was like, well, let's see where this goes, because the player really seems to be enjoying this part of it. A little about 5th edition as a system. The game itself is divided really into 3, I don't know if you call it sections, 3 aspects, but there's role play, combat, and exploration. And everyone kind of gravitates towards one of those 3 more than the other 2. And that player is definitely like a role play character. Like that's his thing above all else. Yeah, that was just kind of something that ended up falling into both of our laps from a storyteller and a player perspective. I totally agree. I'm really happy with how his character has handled it. Yeah, I'm really excited to continue pursuing that in season 2.
So far, it's just been so sweet. I'm trying to find a comparison in my head when I was going to ask you this question. I'm like, it's not like at all like Princess Bride, but yet it has that very, the only word I could use is like that sweet quality to it.
Definitely. I kind of liken it like when you have 2 friends, they can function really well on their own and they're really well adjusted, nice people. And when they get together and you're just like, oh, yes, that needed to happen. I've kind of the same sentiment towards the player and this NPC. It's like, oh, I'm so glad that this has come around.
Yeah, that is exactly it. Yeah, it's like when 2 friends meet. Exactly. I love it. So you have a blog.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have whole sections dedicated to just puns.
Yeah.
I am such a sucker for really good puns. So you gonna hit me with something?
You're speaking my language. Let me just preface this. So last May, not this previous May, but like May of 2019, I was in Des Moines for a convention called DemiCon, and it's sci-fi, fantasy, and board gaming related, everything under that umbrella. But really, it can be anything. Like in the one room, there's Adventures League D&D. The next room, there's like a Weird Al sing-along. The next room is like horror movie, open discussion. It can be anything. And so in 2019, in May, they had a dad joke competition. Naturally, I took first place, not to like pat myself on the back or anything. But yeah, so then in anticipation for this year, I've been collecting a list of dad jokes on my phone, and I'm easily over 250 by now in the list. Because of COVID, it didn't end up happening. And so now I just have this big ass list of dad jokes. Yeah, the blog is kind of a good outlet to be like, hey, check this out. These are kind of silly. Like, do you know what you call a guy with no body and no nose?
I don't.
Nobody knows.
And yet I should have literally seen that coming. No.
I think those are the best ones where it's like they tell it to you and then it's like, oh, I should know this. And then as soon as they say the answer, it's like, ah, damn it. Did you hear in the news that a giant fly attacked the police?
I did not.
Yeah, they had to call in a SWAT team.
I did find this one. This is my favorite one so far, because I haven't read all of them yet. Everyone says they love pirate humor until you start cracking jokes.
Classic.
Oh, God, I love that one. That was great.
Yeah, what's great too is like for a lot of the like the school appropriate ones, I can kind of test them out on the kids. Because junior high kids are young enough where they still appreciate the dad jokes. They like it when teachers are a little silly.
Yes.
Like you can't be all like hard ass with them, You got to be a little funny sometimes and try and meet them on their level. So that's kind of my litmus test for some of these is like if they make the list or not. Is like, did the kids laugh? Like half of the class laughs, then this is a keeper.
I have this question for you. What is your favorite part of history to teach and why?
Ooh, that's hard. Because there's so much. I should say I really like the causes of World War I, that era. is just fascinating to me. And I tried to work that into the podcast, where season one, some of the characters, some of the situations the players are put in is almost lifted right out of different situations from like the pre-World War I era. It's just fascinating. You flash backwards to the Napoleonic Wars, where it took 7 coalitions for them to defeat Napoleon, and everyone just agrees after sacrificing hundreds of thousands of troops in the process. They're like, we can't have this happen again. And so for 100 years, they maintain this balance of power. By the time that World War I happens, it's like the grandsons and granddaughters of these people that sacrificed so much and established this hard-fought peace. They don't appreciate it, and they don't know how to maneuver this like increasingly complex world. I did this activity with the kids where I break them up into 8 groups, and every group has a major nation involved. One group's Serbia, one's Russia, one's the USA, one's Germany, one's France, and so on. Each one gets like a half sheet where it talks about their nation, what their goals are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then who their allies and enemies are. They do like a gallery walk and they share out, get everyone else's information so they have a complete picture of what the world stage was like right before the first shots were fired. And they have to try and make like a solution. It's like a presentation where they present their solution. Every group, if it aligns exactly with their team, then they raise the green flag, but if it doesn't, they raise the red flag. And the way it's set up is that there's no solution that will work. And so by the end of it, the kids realize, like, wow, this really is unavoidable.
Wow.
Just like the light bulb moment with the kids is so much fun to see because they really get it. They're like, there's no stopping this, is there, Mr. Headlee? And I'm like, nope.
I wish you had been one of my history teachers now, because that sounds like a lot of fun.
Thank you. Yeah, we do a lot of projects, group work, simulations. I have them where they work in a group, but I grade them individually. So you don't have that one kid that like does all the work and then the slacker gets the good grade too, because I hate that.
Oh my God, you're now like my favorite teacher, and you're not even my teacher. Where were you like when I was like, you weren't born yet?
Yeah, it was probably just a dirty thought in my dad's head.
Oh man, I absolutely hated that. It literally was not until college that I was put into a group of people that were all extremely serious about the subject, and we were all working together and we all pulled our own weight. Now that is really sad that I had to wait that long. We got an A+ on that project. I was really proud of it.
Heck yeah. I try to do one, I call them hitmen activities, and we do one per unit, and HIT stands for historian in training. And so it's like an activity specifically where they look at primary sources from back in the day, like legit letters and speeches and stuff, use that to make comparisons. So like for the one of them, the one that we do in the first unit with colonization is where we look at the economy of Jamestown and see like how it was based on tobacco. And they had all these millionaires, because tobacco was like a cash crop. And then we compare that with Plymouth, where they like diversify what they produce, but there's no real millionaires like there are in Jamestown. So in Jamestown, it's like they hyper focus on one thing. And in Plymouth, they spread the wealth a little bit. So they have like a more, I guess, like an evenly developed society. And the kids then, the overall question is which one would be better to live in and why? And then they have to do a paragraph written response explaining using the evidence that they found from the sources. And we do one of those every unit. And it's the kids usually like it because it's like real history. It's not out of the textbook. It's like legit from the mouth of these people that lived back then.
Okay, so I'm going to complete my assignment and then I'm just going to email it to you so you can grade it for me. Because I want to do that.
We do another really fun one too for the shot heard around the world, where I show them this really cool video where it's like the gathering on the Lexington Green, and like the 700 British troops march up versus like 50 patriots. And it's like bang, and all of a sudden like the shit hits the fan. There's a British lieutenant in his journal that we read where he talks about that day. And then there's a Patriot account where he has to testify in court, and he talks about that day. We compare and contrast and stuff, and it's just a lot of fun. The more I've played D&D and the more I've taught, it seems that a lot of those skills from both of those kind of overlap. Being able to communicate, being able to relate to people, being able to be creative in your presentation, and take the effort to make it interesting for people. Those are GM skills and also teacher skills. And so I think the one has made me better at the other, and vice versa.
Have you listened to Mission Spooky?
I have not. I am just scratching the surface. Last year when Logan was like, hey, you want a DM for my podcast? I was like, what's a podcast?
Nice.
So yeah, I've been getting into podcasts more and more.
I was going to say, it's fine. Most of the people that I have on this show have never listened to my other show. It's really funny. So I've always been fascinated by ghost stories. And so my co-host over there, JC, he's like a ghost hunter slash paranormal investigator for a while. So I said, hey, you know what? If we come up with this concept, I'm more into the history of it. And I kind of want to check behind people and see if some of the stories could actually happen. Because you know how legends are. Is it real? Is it made up? And I was actually pretty surprised and pleased to find that a lot of these stories about the ghost or the happenings or the weirdness come somewhere from history. So we can kind of clean that up a little bit.
Oh, totally. Yeah, a lot of times legends are based in something historical that happened, but over time it just kind of gets embellished like a fish story every time it gets a little bit bigger, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's really cool to peel back the layers and see the truth, investigate the truth of what happened. Kind of like with Heinrich Schliemann and the Trojan War. Like 100 years ago, people just assumed that the Trojan War and like the Iliad, that was just like a story that people told. And, this could never happen, rah, rah, rah. And then Heinrich Schliemann goes and finds the city of Troy in Turkey, and everyone like shits their pants collectively. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, this came from somewhere.
I always do top 5 questions with everybody. And I realize that not everyone is going to be able to answer this question, or you might not even be into some of these things. So we're just going to go for it.
Yeah, I'm game.
First one, do you have a favorite superhero?
Abso-stinking-lutely. Favorite superhero has got to be Hellboy.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, he's so good. I mean, like his character, like the way he's written, he feels like an actual person that you would meet, and be like, just the way he reacts to things, it's like, yeah, that's totally believable. And he's got like this whole destiny that he's trying to fight back against. He tries to fight back against it, but every step takes him closer to it. It's just such a good, like, such good storytelling. I've got the entire Hellboy comic run from Seed of Destruction all the way through. Well, now I'm drawing a blank. It's not the Wild Hunt, but the one it was like two after that. But yeah, it's so good. I've read through those like a dozen times. Hellboy is freaking awesome.
Have you seen the newer movie?
Yes, I thought it was okay. My biggest criticism with it is that they tried to take 10 graphic novels worth of information and condense it down into one movie. It's like the same thing they did with the Avatar movie. I think that would have been better if they tried to like stretch it out more, because you have an entire season you're cramming into one movie, and that just turns into like voiceovers because you can't cover all that in 2 hours.
Yeah, I did not see this newer movie just because we had the kid and which films we're actually going to the movies to see.
I totally get it.
I loved the first two. I thought they were great. People who were Hellboy fans, they didn't dislike this newer version. They just were like, yeah, a lot of the same comments.
Yeah, I would have liked for them to try and make it a trilogy, and then they could go deeper into the characters.
On movies, do you have a favorite that you could watch like over and over and over again?
Yes, this one's a tie. It's definitely between Empire Strikes Back and The Terminator.
Nice.
I love the scenes with Yoda in Empire Strikes Back. There's a quote that I just found like super impactful when I was like in my formative years. It's the scene, like you've seen it before, where the X-Wing is in the bog and Luke tries to lift it and he fails and he goes and pouts and stuff. And then Yoda, this little frog man, just lifts it out like it's nothing. And Luke says, like, I can't believe it. And then Yoda comes back with, that's why you failed.
Yep.
And it's just such like great writing, kind of the mind over matter type of idea.
I think Empire is still my absolute favorite of all Star Wars movies.
It's amazing. Every minute of it is just like top tier, like S tier.
Yes. It's like perfect.
Terminator also, that one is really captivating. I don't, have you've seen like the original Terminator movie, right?
Oh, yes.
Totally. Like it's one that I'll have on in the background when I'm doing things, but you know that scene where like Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor are in the car and they're like crouched down and the Terminator's scanning around for him and he tells her about the future war and about her son John Connor who's going to save the world from Skynet. That's like the scene. It's so captivating. I just have to stop what I'm doing and watch it and just like stand there. Dude, it's mesmerizing.
I was can't remember how old I was exactly. I was young enough that I could not watch Terminator when it first came out because I was a little bit too young, being an R-rated film, and it looked so awesome. I was already a huge Schwarzenegger fan. I even as like a kid, like 8, 9 years old, I had posters from like Tiger Beat up on the walls of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just thought he was the best thing ever because I loved action films. But this one, you know, was kind of like my parents were like, there's some nudity in it or some stuff we're not sure about it. Well, I went to my cousin's house and my uncle had it on VHS. So you know how long it had been out for a while. And she finally was like, hey, you want to watch some movies that we're not allowed to watch yet, kind of thing. And I was like, hell yeah, because we were alone. We were home alone. She was a little bit older than me, right? She's like maybe 2 years older than me. So she pops all these movies in. That was the first time I saw Terminator was at like midnight in my uncle's house. Hunkered down, trying to make sure nobody saw us as we were like popping these videos in. And then I watched it and I was like, what was that all about? Like, there was like nothing in this film that was that bad.
That's so funny. Yeah, I was that way with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like, we watched it as, like, me and my older brother watched it when we were kids, and we, like, felt like we were getting away with something.
Logan and I had a long discussion about Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
It's fantastic.
I'd already covered it once, but in case no one, go back and listen to that one, but I'll reiterate that I went to Catholic school and watched that movie every day in art class for almost an entire year.
They let you do that in Catholic school? Wow. That must have been like the cool teacher.
It was the art teacher. He's friggin' awesome. Just roll the TV in with the VHS. It was VHS, just roll the TV in with the VHS tape and set it up, and we'd be sitting there doing our art assignments and listening to Monty Python.
Heck yeah. I feel like there's a whole generation of people that, like, they went through a phase where all they do is quote Monty Python.
I believe I might have been in that. Yeah. There's also darn it. Well, now I remembered it after, but sorry, Logan. Spinal Tap. Have you seen that movie yet?
I haven't.
Oh, you guys see Spinal Tap. It is so funny. It's basically taking a look at a fake rock and roll band from when they're going through their different phases all the way up until they're sort of like metal.
That sounds cool.
They have like the 60s. They formed in like the 60s and the 70s, and they're like kind of like in the 80s when it's quote unquote filmed as a documentary. It's absolutely brilliant.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds pretty cool.
It just hit me like that movie I was watching at the same time that I was watching Monty Python, the Holy Grail, specifically the Holy Grail. So between that movie and Spinal Tap, yes, that's all we quoted at the ends of high school. It was ridiculous. It was like that junior, senior year. Everything was those two movies for a while. Okay, so do you have a favorite author?
I do. This one's also kind of a tie, but they're like different mediums. So my favorite author of books, definitely J.R.R. Tolkien. I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy like a bazillion times. Same with The Hobbit. I've easily read The Hobbit like 25 times in my life because it's one of those things, every time you read it, you realize something different about it. I don't know if it's just me. But yeah, it's also like the language in it is so descriptive and evocative.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had like a really overactive imagination. I don't know if you're like one of those people where when you read something, it's like you picture it in your head.
Oh, yes.
I've got that like turned up to 11, where I can like visualize these scenes happening and these characters. Yeah, Lord of the Rings is so good for that because people ding him because he's too descriptive, but I'm like 100% in that court.
Yeah, that's what you want. You want that descriptive because you're creating that scene in your own head.
Exactly. Yeah, like if I could read one chapter of one book for the rest of my life and that was it would easily be Ride of the Rohirrim from Return of the King. Just that whole scene where it starts out with Theoden and Gonbarigon. They make it to Minas Tirith and it looks like they're too late, but they're going to ride to their death anyway. Kind of like the Charge of the Light Brigade type,
Yes.
So good. Oh my God. So that's like for books. J.R.R. Tolkien is like light years ahead of anyone else. Now, I'm also really into comic books. My favorite comic book author is John Ostrander. His storytelling ability is like S tier. He wrote some Star Wars comics that I was really into called Star Wars Republic. That was really popular. And so then he got the thumbs up to write Star Wars Legacy, which was a 50 comic run set like 140 years after the movies. And that was amazing. And then he got another thumbs up to make a series called Dawn of the Jedi, and that was when the licensure switched over from Dark Horse to Marvel, so they had to cut it short a little bit. He's like the goose that lays golden eggs, Everything he's involved in is just fantastic when it comes to comics. He also, fun fact, I looked this up earlier, he also helped in the creation of the character Oracle from DC, where it's like Barbara Gordon gets paralyzed, and she still finds a way to like help out the Bat crew. Yeah, he had a hand in that, which is really cool.
That I did not know.
Yeah,
Huh.
just a fascinating dude. He was at a convention in Des Moines a few years ago. I had the chance to go see him, and I didn't take it. It's like like a 3.5, 4 hour drive over there, and then the same amount back. And I kicked myself because I wish I would have gone and met him so I could like shake his hand and have him sign my face.
Now, I did not read any of those Star Wars comics. I'm familiar with them from a sales perspective, but I did not read those.
Legacy is so fucking good. Pardon my French, but that's the best comic I've ever read of anything. Marvel, DC, Star Wars, superhero, you name it. Legacy is like the top dog. There's genuine moments in there where it's like you feel for the characters because they're so well written, and like genuine tearjerker moments, where it's like, man, I'm tearing up over fake people right now, but I can't stop these feelings.
That's what good writing is all about, right there.
For sure. And I try and carry that over into the podcast where it's like you get to know the characters, you get to care about them as people and kind of suspend the disbelief like all the fantasy is fake, but the characters could be someone that are real. And so when they hurt, it hurts and you hurt.
Oh yeah. By the way, thank you. You did make me cry. Yeah,
Yeah.
you did. And I'll tell you. I'll tell you later.
Yeah. I know Logan mentioned it in the other episode, but yeah, right before the first time we recorded, he was like, Ben, I want you to make me cry. Challenge accepted.
Right? Okay. In what way? In a happy way or really, really, really bad way?
Right. Like ugly cry or dignified man tear.
Right. Okay. Do you have a favorite musician? And it's okay if you have multiple.
That's okay. This is another really hard one because, like when you're in different moods, you want to listen to different stuff. I mentioned on here before how I suffer from anxiety really badly. So my calm music, my chill out, slow the heart rate, back to bass line music is John Denver. I don't know if you listen to much John Denver. He's like a bluegrass from the 70s.
I know John Denver.
Yeah, he's so great. He just sings about nature. It's like Bob Ross for your ears.
Oh, that's perfect. That is exactly how it is. Yeah. I grew up in the 70s, so yeah, he was super popular on the radio all the time. Yeah, he was, and I just remember him also being such a really genuinely nice person in
Oh, for
interviews
sure.
and yeah, and then people talking about it. And then when he passed away, it was just, horrifying because I was still a kid-ish when he passed away, and it was just like, what happened? But no, anyway, sorry, digress into like
No,
into
you're okay.
sadness. But no, he's great, and you're right. It is like Bob Ross for your ears, man.
Yeah, it's just like so relaxing. And I bought these sound dampening headphones that Bluetooth, they're wireless and they can Bluetooth to my phone here. So it's so relaxing after like a long day of doing nothing and, dreading about the start of the school year to just like sit down and listen to Annie's song or a Rocky Mountain High or Sunshine on My Shoulders and just like zone out.
Now I want to go put all that on my Spotify list because it's been a long time since I listened to it. Okay, now what else do you listen to?
My general purpose music, I guess you could say, is Weird Al Yankovic.
Hold on a second. Okay, so
Yeah, he's just great. Like I know more lyrics to Weird Al songs than the songs that they're based off of.
I played my Weird Al tape so many because we had cassette tapes. When I was a child, there was no CDs. I played my Weird Al tape until I had to go buy another one.
Hell yeah.
It was the one that had "Eat It" on it.
Oh yeah, the Food album. Yeah, that's really good. They say I had a cassette tape back in the mid '90s with Amish Paradise. Man,
Yes,
that shit bumps. That is legit.
it's just really funny because I'm thinking about my own child, and I'm like, oh my god, when you get just a little tiny bit older, maybe because I think I was about, I don't know, I guess it was probably like 10 by then, when he was like super popular
Mhm.
and the stuff was on the radio. And then back then, because you didn't have any money for going to buy a cassette, so you'd literally wait until the song came on the radio and then tape it.
Totally.
That was my first Weird Al Yankovic. I was just like, I'm taping every song. My Bologna though,
Yeah, I
dude.
love that. So something else that's great too is like in his career, he's always kept it like family friendly, which as a kid, it's like, this is silly. But then as an adult, it's like I can still listen to this in public and I don't get a bunch of people like pissed off, a bunch of Karens, you know, because I'm the coach for the robotics team, and I'm the sponsor for the D&D club at the school, and it's like I can play that in the background and not have to worry about f bombs or anything.
Right.
And it's really cool because then you know the kids enjoy it. They're like, "Who is this?" And you push it on to the next generation and just see like how much they enjoy the silliness of it all.
Right. And then it's okay to be silly.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big thing. It's okay to be silly, you know. That's like my mantra.
Now, I don't know. I'm probably dating myself even further. It's funny. Logan's like, "You keep dating." I'm like, "Well, I'm old. I can't help it." We had Dr. Demento on the radio. I want to say that was Saturday nights, like super late at night. And Dr. Demento would play all of that crazy kind of music, including Weird Al. So it was all just fun music, funny things. They're coming to take me away. Eat my shorts, which was another like stupid song.
Oh yeah, like Earth of the Night when Santa went crazy. I remember like
Yes.
being in my dad's truck listening to that for the first time and just like squirting milk out of my nose and just howling, you know.
So, final question. I can't wait to see like how many people have different answers for this or the same answer. What is your favorite word?
Oh man, I think that you saved the hardest one for last. I gotta say like I really like the word tea because that's
Ah,
I'm like a big tea drinker. Like I don't do coffee at all. I do alcohol like sometimes, you know, but tea is like where it's at. Hot or cold, you know, English breakfast tea with a little bit of milk, you know, or lemon jasmine tea. That's the bomb if you're like sleepy.
yeah. Keep talking.
Yeah, so I'd have to say tea. Yeah, tea is probably my favorite word. In fact, I was just working on it's called Kahoot, and it's like a review game you can do with the kids. And because of social distancing, we can't do like a lot of the icebreakers that we were going to do. And so I was making like a get to know Mr. Headley Kahoot, and one of the questions on there is what is the force that powers Mr. Headley's life? The options are positivity, faith, existential dread, and tea. And tea is the right answer.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, plus you can also be like, so what's the tea?
Totally. Yeah, the kids had to tell me that one. They're like, tea is like when you have really saucy news. And I was like, gossip? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah. Except tea just sounds so much cooler.
it does. Yeah. It's like the new lingo. Now, one thing also I appreciate in terms of words are words that describe what they do. Like I feel like if I was ESL and was learning English, those would be my favorite words. Like a grasshopper hops over grass, it tells you what it does right in the name. Or like an
Right.
anteater or a fly flies, you know? I'd be like, yeah, that makes it easy. Like if you were a foreigner trying to pronounce the word yacht, it's not going to happen, you know? Or like the word Q, where it just sounds like the letter Q with four more silent letters. I feel like that'd be confusing as hell really quick.
I had to laugh like way off mic for that one. That was good. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I complain about something similar to this with English food because they call it spotted dick, which is extremely confusing because all it is raisin bread. That's what it is. England, why can't we just agree that it just needs to be called raisin bread? Because spotted dick doesn't sound like anything that anybody wants to eat. Old joke, I know, but still.
Well, right. It makes me wonder what other kind of food shenanigans they're pulling. Like, do they have a kind of salsa called gonorrhea? Like,
Right. Like, ugh, gross.
right? Yeah, if some British person offered me spotted dick, I'd be like, no, thank you. I'm engaged.
Oh my God. Okay. I've got English. I've got English ancestors, and I'm constantly like, I used to be able to have tea with my great grandmother. She was from Bradford, so even as a little kid, I remember going to great grandma's house, and both my great aunts were there, and we all had afternoon tea together.
That's really cool.
And I can not for the life of me, I cannot remember what is the other one. It's so simple. It's just cinnamon bun, and they call it like a Chelsea bun. And I'm like, you don't call it, you don't name it after the place it was made. Just call it what it is.
Right. Like, it's not hard.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I bet those are great memories too, you know?
Oh yeah. My great grandmother was great. I loved her dearly. And she was one of those women who was completely spry and 100% on until the day she just passed away in her sleep. I want that. I want to be like still playing the piano. Well, I don't play the piano. She did. But you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
I want to be listening to Rammstein at 101, okay? That's my life goal.
Yeah, my grandpa Headley was the same way. My dad's dad. He was a junior high teacher also. He taught choir and music at the elementary level in his last year's teaching. He was just the coolest guy. Even up until when he was on hospice, and all that. Like he was just such a good person. And he's like pretty with it up until the end. Like he kind of set the bar that I try and measure myself up to. Just a great person. He's like a World War II vet that dropped out of high school and then went back to get his GED when he very well could have just like with the GI Bill, he could have just like graduated. And he's like, no, we're going to do this the right way. And ended up, becoming a teacher, which like no one that knew him back then would have guessed. Just a really awesome, interesting dude.
That's really cool. I'm sitting here looking at some of my notes that I made, and I know that I listened to your interview you and Logan did with Top 5 Death, and I don't know if this is what it comes from. I'm just going to say it, and I can cut it if it doesn't make any sense at all, or whatever, but I wrote thunderclaps down, and I, for the life of me, have no idea what that means.
Yes. Dr. Rush's thunderclaps. Patent pending.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that must have made me laugh, and I was just writing it down. Like, there you go.
Yeah, and that's one of those things like, when you try and get an emotional response out of the kids, like being a dungeon master, you want an emotional response out of your players because it's going to mean more. It'll have more impact. You try and get that from the kids also. And that's one thing where I've had kids just howl, like tears coming out of their eyes when I explain the whole situation to them. And they're like, they ate what? What happened? They're trying to find what in the soil, And it's just like so funny. It's one of those times where like real life is weirder than fiction.
Oh my goodness. I just had a total blank. I was like, now I know that has something to do with the podcast. What does that mean? And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh my God. Yes. Just one of the many, many hysterical things. So is there anything else that you personally like to add?
Well, let me just plug. So we are a part of a network now. It's called the Make Fun Network. And they're on Facebook as a group. Go join it. They're fantastic. They post just a ton of really funny stuff, nerd culture related, everything from TV show bracket that the one guy's working on to funny memes, the D&D stuff to literature stuff. Anything that's in the realm of nerddom, you name it, it's on there. Yeah, it's a really awesome group to be a part of. So that's the network that our podcast is part of. The blog that I have is beardythedungeonmaster.wordpress.com. And then as far as listening to it, you can find our podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and Overcast.
I listen on Spotify currently. That's my jam. Thank you so much for being on. Like I said, I was super excited to talk to you.
I really appreciate coming on here. It's really nice to be able to talk shop. And I really appreciate your support and stuff as well. Because yeah, like I said, I'm just a nervous wreck when episodes come out, and so it's really nice to hear from fans that have enjoyed it, and it just it gives me a little bit of confidence and validation.
I totally understand that. Podcasting in general, you're sort of like putting yourself out there, and then you're just kind of hoping for the best.
Right. Yeah, this has been really awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining me today. You can keep up with Lost Legends Tales of Thurne on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and you can find them wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to check out Ben's blog at Beardy the Dungeon Master. Music today was provided by Psykotic Refuge. If you need pod-safe music for your next project, you can find Psykotic Refuge on Bandcamp.